Hi, I'm Cate Stillman, for those who don't know me yet. Nice to meet you. Been steering the ship here at Yogahealer for 20 years. So the reason I'm doing this workshop here for you all is I think it's important for you to experience what you want to experience more of, more easily. To me, that's there's a sense of ease that should come with life experience. And that's really what we're into today. And that's what we're diving into. It's what we're talking about. It's why we're here. It's why we're here. And it's why we're here together. All right. So basically, I've been guiding people into peak performance with yoga and Ayurveda. And a lot of it has really come through personal experimentation over the last 20 years. I just want to tell you a little bit about how I got into peak performance. And it really came through yoga. And that's why we're going to focus a little bit on how yoga philosophy really can be an amazing reference point and help you come back to where you may have some gaps when you're trying to make something happen. And you're, basically step up more to an A game in certain areas of your life. So 20 years ago, I completed this 2-year yoga teacher training program. And this wasn't like a 2-week training where you left with a certificate. This was like the most arduous certification yoga training like to date in the country. And it's still, if there was one around now, it still would be that was that long. So we had classes on philosophy, on breathing, on the mat, on sequencing, on therapeutics. It was the real deal. And you also learned in the process, you learned the history of yoga, which spans thousands of years and it evolves into the future. It continually becomes more relevant to now. So since becoming a yoga teacher and an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner, basically over the last 20 years, I've also been self-employed. And I grew a small business, which then turned into a bigger business with lots of people working with me and for me. So along the way, I became a CEO of a growing online coaching company with course members who have breakthroughs in all areas of their life, from physical health to mental health, to emotional health, to career, family, finance. And over the years, I've more or less to succeed, I've had to optimize my life for peak performance. So besides being a yogi and a business owner, I'm also a mom and a wife and a daughter. My folks live a mile down the road. I have a lot of responsibilities and I also have a lot of opportunities. And so with all this, what I found is that like with more ambition, life becomes more complicated. And this is where peak performance is essential. So if you want to enjoy your success and your wisdom and your life, at some point you realize like you've got to live life on your A game. You always want to feel great in your body. You always want to be able to focus your mind. And you always want to make intuitive decisions that are aligned to your soul in real time. And yoga philosophy it really has in many ways been the backbone of this for me. It's really shown me the way. And so today, that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain just step by step how to apply a little essential chunk called the niyamas in yoga philosophy and how to apply that to be on your A game. So if you have questions throughout the workshop, you can ask them in the side panel and we'll either get back to you like right in the chat or after the session is over within the next day or two. So if you have questions, just type them in as we go. Anna Berkelmans is also here. Anna, do you want to wave? I think you're on the home screen. There you are. She'll also be answering questions in real time. And so to give you an idea of what I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to go through this core component of yoga philosophy that is ancient and quintessential and essential right now. And I just want to have a reminder, if you haven't taken our peak performance assessment, it came to you via email, you should do that and you should schedule your session for that. At the end of the workshop, I'm also going to give you a super deal on our Change Your Life course, which is our starter course for anyone who's serious about peak performance and everyday living. All right, so let's jump right in. I just want to ask you first, and it's good to have a notebook. So if you don't have your notes handy, it would be great for you to have a little notepad to write on. Because I want you to isolate. It'll be much more like, I don't do as much of a webinar as a workshop type of an experience here. So the whole idea is I'm going to be asking you questions, and you're going to be, you're going to be thinking about them and making notes and really focusing. And one way to look at this is like, where do you feel on top of life? And where does life feel on top of you? And you can look in a few different areas. Like, this can help. I'm just trying to give you some prompts to make this workshop more useful to you, so that as we get into yoga philosophy, that you know exactly where you need to apply it next. Is it your body? Is it your home? Is it your relationships? Is it in reaching core goals, or having really specific ambitions that you seem to be, wanting something but not able to achieve it? Is it your career, which can also be your next purpose, but you also may have a purpose outside of your career? In yoga, we'd call this dharma. That there's a calling is another way to look at that. Purpose. Is it in your finances? And I just want to say, one of the things that often people experience when identifying like where they need to improve is a sense of like guilt or shame or feeling bad that you haven't already been able to figure that out. You know what I mean? Where it's like say it's finances. If you and you've been great in your body habits and you feel great, but like your finances are a mess, or they're not where you want them to be at this phase of your life or this stage of your life. You might feel bad about that. And then yet it's true vice versa, right? Like someone might be killing it financially and not being taken care of their body, and they might feel really, really bad about that and kind of beat themselves up. And I just want to say, like, that's not a winning strategy. So let's just start with that right now. Like, don't feel bad about any of these areas here just not being on track with where you want them to be, with where you want to improve. Just simply use those emotions or those feelings to take note. And for some people, it can be in relationship, right? That like, certain things, areas of your life, maybe your career is totally on track, and maybe your personal body habits are great, and your finances are great, but your personal relationships, like maybe that's in parenting, maybe that's in how you take care of your aging parents, maybe that's in relationships in your community, like might be an area that is really starting to, feel like a bit of a shadow issue or a black hole, or an area that like needs improvement. Okay, so does everyone have those? Do you know what you're focusing on? You need a focus for this, or it's not going to be that effective. So I just want you to choose. Trying to help you help yourself here. Choose your focus. Okay. And it could be a few areas too, as well. Like if there's more than one area, just note which ones it is. If it's something that's not on the list, just make note of that. I just want to make sure that this is effective as we go forward for you right now. And it's really where you want this feeling of the person on the right, like where you want to feel on top of your game. Like, yeah, like that, I'm an A player in this area. Like I am peak performing. I'm achieving my dreams. I'm living in tune with my desires. I'm on purpose, and that's dharma. I'm living this area of my life on purpose. So I was talking with my friend Rachel Peters, and I was like, there's this way that like this way that, and this is like a really messy slide, which doesn't make any sense. And I made it really neat. This is my neat version of that slide, but I thought I'd show you the original. Often like as ideas come to me, I'm like, I think there's a great way to apply the niyamas. And she's a yogi, so she knew exactly what I was talking about. I think there's a great way to apply the niyamas to peak performance. And I'm like, I think I naturally, like I think people who study yoga might naturally do this, but there's, again, what I found over time is that even our yoga teachers aren't that well trained in yoga philosophy anymore. We're more taught how to lead classes that are, to give a more of an athletic experience than we are to attune our life to peak performance on and off the mat. And this wasn't how yoga used to be. Like yoga used to be like you studied philosophy a lot before you got physical teachings. And it was just part of the history of yoga. It's sort of part of the evolutionary development of yoga. And I think what's happened is that because people live such a sedentary life now, that we go to yoga because we need a workout. Like literally, like we need to stand up, like we need to bend over, we need to raise a leg in the air, we need to go upside down and inside out and explore our body. So I don't see that as a bad thing, but I also don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, because that's going to miss some of the points, going to miss some of the massive ways that yoga and yoga philosophy can help you play your A game in really any of these areas of your life. All right. So now that you have a sense of like what your target is of which areas of your life, I'd like you to just identify like what would be a specific outcome that you would know you were playing your A game. So you now have a few areas of life, or maybe you've just identified one, maybe it's finances. And you could say like, well, how would I know I'm playing my A game? How would I know? And so I'm asking you to come up with a specific outcome. Okay, what's a specific outcome? And even if we made it for just a month in the future from now, how would you know? How would you know you were playing your A game? I'm typing this in the chat. So what's a specific outcome you could say, or a specific result that would be evidence of success? Those of you who are in project management or in business, you've probably heard evidence of success. You've probably heard that term before, that like you do something and there's evidence of success. There's evidence that you succeeded. That's essentially what I'm asking you now. Like what would have changed? What would your evidence of success be around what you're trying to improve? That's good. So Darlene said I would have an extra 50K in my bank account. That's a very specific measurable. Like we can look in Darlene's bank account now, we can look in a month, and we could all objectively see like, did she do it? Okay, sleep deep, wake refreshed and ready to go. Good. So I would even put a number of hours on that, Kathy. Like I would get really specific. I would get that specific. Like I'm sleeping deeply, 8 hours a night, 5 out of 7 days a week, something like that. Something that really is like, oh yeah, that is achievable. And that's a good one because McKinley wants that too. Awesome. Down 10 pounds. Good. And you might want to describe the quality of your tissue too, because you can lose weight and have poor quality tissue, or you can lose weight and have high quality tissue. Okay. Anne says, I'm teaching and loving it. So teaching how much, Anne? Like I'm asking for like really specific here, you guys. Like get really clear on what would have changed that would be enough. It would be enough to be like, yep, that would be evidence of success, and it would have moved the needle enough to show that I'm on the right trajectory. All right, so Robert Brolt, he's an author, speaker. He says, we are kept. Many of you have seen this slide before. Have done workshops with me. I love this because we're kept from our goal, not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. And that's a way of saying that like we basically do what's familiar, right? We solve problems in the way that we're familiar with solving problems. But the problem is we often need a different way of thinking about it. We often have we need a different strategy than the strategies we've applied before, because otherwise the strategies we've applied before would have gotten us to the targets that we desired. We would have already had the extra 50K in the bank account or be down 10 pounds. Right. So that's part of the problem, is like where our focus is going. And this is really going to come in. Now that you know what your target is, this is really now going to be handy when we start to look at what is basic yoga strategy for hitting targets, like for having the experience that we want to have. And so this first niyama that we're going to look for, and the niyamas in many ways, they're ways to live. They're like precepts that make the path easier to navigate. And yoga is packed with concise philosophy. And the Yoga Sutras are a great ancient text that's about 2,000 years old. There's other texts as well, but that's sort of the diehard text of yogis is the Yoga Sutras. And this comes up, I think it's around Sutra 30, 31, where they go through the yamas and niyamas. And by 2,000 years ago, yoga had already been around for a few thousand years. And there's a lot of different scriptures that refer to the yamas and niyamas, these ways, these self-restraints and these ways to act. And by the time Patanjali rolled around 2000 years ago, he was more of an editor than anything else. And he looked at all the previous scripts and he basically compiled them into the most thorough and concise teachings of the time. And basically with the niyamas are these precepts. He basically came down to like, there's these 5 things that you need to do to live in accordance with what you're trying to do. And that's what we're going to go into today. We're going to unpack these 5. And the first one is saucha. Saucha has to do, to me, really, in this case, with cleaning up your act. It's like, what does that even mean, to clean up your act? Well, it means that to me, it means this. It's like whatever target you just set for yourself, and now you have a specific desired outcome, right? And you have a specific area of focus or 2, and you have a specific desired outcome or 2. You have to look at like, are the habits that I have now leading there? And if so, I'm well on my way, and it's changing my personality, totally in alignment with the next purpose. Or are the specific habits that I have now, are they going in the direction of what's keeping me in my own status quo? And your status quo and my status quo might not be the same thing. And so I'm really more interested in like for your purposes, for like your status quo. I have my own status quo. My status quo might be your peak performance or vice versa, right? So it's more important for you is like, what are the specific habits that'll actually get you? And it has to be a change. Otherwise, you're going to get the same outcome you're getting right now. So there has to be a change. This idea of cleaning up our act. I love this statement by Pablo Picasso. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. And so what's being destroyed right now really is, according to yoga philosophy, is the ego identity that is tied up with the habits of the past that are giving you the current outcome you're experiencing. So whatever outcome you're experiencing right now, there's an identity. The word identity in yoga is ego, is ahamkara. That personality construct, and that's all it is. It's habituated by actions. So whatever those actions are, some of them are good and helping. Some of them are not. Some of them are hurting. And so write down right now, like, what are some of the little habits that you think you have that might need to be destroyed, that might not survive this personality evolution, that will actually get you to the desired results. And this is part of cleaning up your act. In yoga, we often look at these things really physically, but they can be applied. In my experience, it can be applied. Yoga philosophy can be applied to any aspect of life. They are universal truths that have stood the test of time. And some of us know, like, there's certain things we do in, like, say relationship was one of your highlighted areas of focus, right? There's maybe some micro habits that you do in relationship that are leading to the current outcome and yet not to the desired outcome. So it's really like cleaning up in every area of your life. Like, what part of the past personality is a bit under, basically now under destruction, needs to be destroyed. And any insight you have, any intuitive insight you have in this, just simply take note. Like, what does that mean to you? In physical issues, I often talk about the negative stressors, like any of the habits of degeneration. Physically, that could be overeating, snacking, eating late, a sedentary lifestyle, convenience foods, making short-term decisions rather than long-term planning, and then short-term decisions in line with long-term planning, worry or negative thinking, sacrificing sleep. Those are the typical ones. But this list of negative stressors can be applied to any aspect of life. The whole idea is that, like, every day you design your tomorrow, you design your bodies tomorrow, but you also design your relationships tomorrow. You also design your finances for tomorrow, your career for tomorrow, your purpose for tomorrow. So this experience with saucha, of this. How do I design specific habits in line with a personality that's more evolved than my current personality, that's on target with my purpose, with my specific desired outcomes? And when we look into that, what we can find is that we want to get really clear on, like, how would that person act? So if we even use the example of finances, someone who's trying to become more financially savvy, it's like there's gonna by necessity be an awareness of what's going on financially, an awareness of the past habits with finances, and then an awareness of like what the target is, and a bit of a, what's my plan? What's my plan for that target? This quote I also love to refer to. This is Yuval Noah Harari. He's an Israeli futurist. He's a writer, author. He says, to keep up with the world of 2050, you'll need to do more than merely invent new ideas and products. But above all, reinvent yourself again and again. Now, this really comes in terms of Saucha and personality. This process of reinvention, that you get to reinvent your personality, is crucial. So say you have a personality of someone who's like not great at finances. We're just gonna use the finances example. You might hear yourself saying things like, I'm horrible with money, or I never look at my bank account, or I live month to month. Those are aspects of personality that are embedded in speech patterning. And yoga is really clear that you can watch how you pattern your speech to reinforce your personality. This could be true with anything with Saucha, like cleaning up your speech is part of like cleaning up, say you apply it to your body. So there were some things around weight loss and healthier diet and whatnot. Like even noticing like how do you talk about how you eat? Because that will need to change. That will need to evolve. Instead of being someone that says like, oh, I love fast food, you'd say like, I love healthy food. You might even think of, how often you're, say, eating out or using takeout or eating prepared foods. And there's a part of your personality that's going to have to change your spending patterns, your buying patterns, your cooking patterns, your home patterns. We know that people that prepare their own food at home from scratch have a healthier diet. Okay, so we'll keep going round and round with these 5 niyamas. A bit of what I want you to understand at this point is whatever your current habits are, they have a personality that they're continually reinventing. And you can reinvent your same personality again and again and again and again. And if you have repetitive issues with any of these, with any of our list, right? Repetitive issues with body, home, relationship, goals, career, finances, what that means you're doing, according to Harari, is you're just continually reinventing the same issues. It's a very interesting way to see it, isn't it? Like you're actually reinventing the same problem by having the same thinking structured pattern around your habits that are recreating your personality in the same way. So if certain things aren't turning out, you've got to be willing to take action on that. You've got to be willing to change the way you act. You've got to be willing to change your personality, which will change your speech patterns, which will change your micro habits, which will change and largely get you into a field of experimentation, experimenting into new personality, into new ways of growth. Okay, so I want to talk about the second niyama here, which is an interesting one, santosha, which means contentment on all levels. It means entirely, completely, and altogether. That's san. It's part of that, like all parts. All parts are in contentment. And this can be like, well, how can I be that when I'm certainly not satisfied with a few things in my life? Like, how can I be both in contentment and in transformation? Right? Isn't that kind of the $1 million question? Has anyone really thought about this before? I think a lot of you have really thought about this before, because we see it all the time in our chats. We see it in our member conversations. We see it in, I see this question constantly reoccurring of like, how do I have a goal and experience like the deep ease and satisfaction that's part of life, especially if you have a yoga practice. And it's kind of like, it's all good, and I need certain things to be better, right? Is anyone really, if you guys thought about this, navigated this? It's like there's a little bit of a yes and, right? Like, how do I experience contentment and extend outside of my zone of comfort and reach into an unknown? And how do I not get wrapped up in like goal setting so much to the point where I'm constantly dissatisfied with where I am now? Right? In any area of your life. It doesn't matter if it's home, if it's relationships, parenting, if it's, community, if it's dharma. Like, I hear all the time, like, I want to have a bigger impact, right? I want to play a bigger game. And how do I experience that and actually make the changes in alignment to do that and simultaneously be altogether contented? And one of the best answers I had to this question from one of my mentors, Craig Hamilton, was basically an understanding that the ground of being, like beingness, like why we actually have these habits and these practices, that why we have the habits that move to transformation and feeling amazing, why we get to experience santosha on the path of better body habits, which include things like meditation or sitting in silence, which include things like easeful living, even in stressful times, is that there's two basic experiences of the self. And one is the ground of being part of the self, and the other is the evolutionary impulse. So there's an impulse to evolve that arises simultaneously in the ground of being. And the ground of being is the experience of contentment. And so if we don't have the body habits, that engender contentment, if we don't have the body habits that move us into a transformational experience of the self, we can get so wrapped up in the goal, we can get into adrenaline addiction and completely deplete ourselves. And I know many people here have done that. Like we have a lot of people in Body Thrive and in Living Our Ayurveda course that are there on a healing journey because they've gone into a deep depletion in which maybe they have an autoimmune disease, or they're not able to sleep anymore, and they have a lot of different side effects from the lack of focus that comes from lack of sleep, or maybe because of excess busyness, there isn't a way to unwind into just enjoying life. And that's when the evolutionary impulse has trumped the ground of being. And the problem is that can get so embedded in the personality, right? Where the personality has the habits of adrenaline addiction that are going to a purpose of achieving a goal. But the problem is we often have multiple goals. We want to experience the joy of the ride on the way to the goal. And so this teaching of santosha is really a teaching of exactly that. It's like you can experience both. You can be in the process of moving towards better and enjoy the process itself. And when you do that, you develop resilience and you develop adaptability. You're willing to change. And this is so important because what I have seen through coaching people for the last 2 decades is a lot of people are not willing, wrong slide, are not willing to change their personality. They want to achieve the goal, but they're not really willing to change their habits that are reinforcing a personality, and they're often not willing to change the personality. And that's a problem because yoga's first rule here in the niyamas is clean up your act. Like you've got to change. You've got to change to experience a greater experience. You have to change. Your personality has to evolve. It's part of the universal law, as far as we can tell. And that's what I feel like yoga philosophy does such a great job of saying. It's like, as far as we can tell, there's some laws. As far as we can tell, these are what the laws are. As far as we can tell, you're not special. You don't get to violate the laws and experience the same results because it doesn't work that way. As far as we can tell, sure, prove us wrong. Like, please try, like, please evolve the teachings. right? And that I think is really brilliant. I think it's a really brilliant way to operate. Is like, if you actually see yourself, instead of so clinging hard to like who you've been and how you are, you start to catch yourself in the act. You catch yourself in the act of reinforcing an outdated personality. You catch yourself in the act of reinforcing outdated habits rather than taking a breath, experiencing the ground of being, experiencing the contentment that's behind every moment, that's always already available. Seeing the goal and saying, how do I need to act now? And that to me is where Saucha and Santosha really intersect. We're cleaning up your act, right? And experiencing contentment in all time, even in the now, all the nows, moment by moment. That's where we really gain power. If we're willing to do those two things, we are on the way to peak performance. And number 3, tapas, is a big deal. So tapas this is discipline to the target. And this is hard. If those first 2 things aren't hard enough, like tapas it ups the game a bit. Because what tapas is saying is like, the desired outcome, right? You've already isolated, you guys all wrote it down in the beginning. You have a desired outcome. It has to be your focus. It has to be your target. Because you can't align to it unless you know what it is, unless you're really willing to say, you know what? I've seen other people do that. And that's a really important thing to do right now, is actually look at whatever you said as the desired outcome and write down a couple people who you're like, I think they know how to do that because they've done it. So, and you have multiple desired outcomes, some of you just have one. Either way, I want you to, with each desired outcome right now, write down like who. And yeah, thanks, Tiffany. Tiffany says me, Cate. Great. If it's me, great. If it's someone else, great. Like, all you need to know is that someone else has done this, that this is possible for mere mortals like yourself. And what might happen is after the workshop, someone else pops onto your mind and you're like, oh, they've done this. They've done this transformation. They've walked this A to B, started here, ended there with that desired outcome, started with the desire, ended up with the desired outcome, and add them to your notes. This really matters. This is who you are paying attention to. And part of the discipline to the target is a discipleship. That's what discipline means. It means discipleship. And discipleship is very much tied to that which we have decided to make sacred. The target is that which we have made sacred. So your desired outcome, you're saying, that's now my sacred goal. Why is it sacred? I want to see if anyone gets this in the chat. Anyone who's been paying attention to me for a long time and knows how I talk. Why is it sacred? What's the etymology? Yes! Chris Quinones got it. Because it requires sacrifice. That's how you make your goal sacred. And it becomes sacred because it requires sacrifice, right? It's the same root. It's the same root. A goal is only sacred if you're willing to sacrifice. What do you have to be willing to sacrifice? Sometimes like a lot, right? Sometimes it can even seem like everything else. Like you've got to sacrifice your distraction. Right? Because the distraction, that's the difference. That's sin versus sacred. So sin is where you have a lack of consistent aligned action. Looks like I misspelled consistent. I'll fix that on my slides. But you basically have a distractions from the target. So all those little circles that I'm showing around here, all those little circles, those are like where your awareness is going. That's not the target. That's what happens, right? Is when we take the eyes off the prize. When you take your eyes off the prize, shiny object syndrome, other people's emergencies. I find we work a lot with, particularly with women over time here, just because of yoga and being in the self-help space and whatnot. And often for women, particularly, although I do see it can happen for anyone, it's often like other people come before your target. And that can actually become a repetitive distraction where you have the personality that everyone else is more important, again, personality, right? Personality is shaped by the habit. If you have the habit of everyone else comes before you, then your personality is based on that. The purpose will go to everyone else's, right? Taking care of everyone else before your desired outcome, and you will miss the mark.
Hey, podcast listeners. Have you been feeling tired, overwhelmed, anxious, or like your body and mind just feel stuck? Well, twice per year, we gather as a community for a 3-week yogi detox, a perfect chance for you to reset your system and clear out the seasonal buildup of physical, mental, and emotional toxins. We trade recipes and tips, and we keep each other accountable. We all know that detoxing with friends is way easier than going it alone. So check out yogidetox.com for your next chance to clear out old patterns and awaken your inner wisdom. We can't wait to see you there.
Men have different distractions from the target. It's very different for different people as well. And, I could make some gross assumptions here. What we've seen over time is like often it's the multidimensional targets that men can miss. They become so targeted to certain things that they really miss other massive areas of life. It could be relationship. It could be their body. And those are probably those are often the two biggest categories. It could be their home, like living in a really elevated, cultivated space for higher levels of being. It could be that. It could be the inner work of targets set on purpose, targets set with, and I have seen this more with men, targets set for much larger purposes of like, what is the impact of this on a greater whole? And instead it's like focused on a specific target that's not taking into account a bigger picture. And then that can be less fulfilling when you hit the target. You're like, I hit the target, but it doesn't feel like I thought it would feel. Right. And so that's just a little bit of a generalization based on men, women, or masculine, feminine types. All right. So what Tapas is saying here, is that there has to be a discipline or a discipleship to the target. The first way we have a discipleship to the target is knowing what it is, making that sacred, meaning being willing to sacrifice. And often the sacrifices come, I find it really to me, it kind of comes back to the ego. Like the ego's used to operating in a certain way. We're used to having a certain way of doing things. And it's kind of like the my way or the highway. And that's our orientation. When we get to the fifth niyama, Isvara Pranidhama, we'll encounter surrender. Basically, we have to surrender to a higher level of being that isn't how we've operated in the past. And that's hard. So we have to be willing to enter into new territory. Entering new territory means experimentation, means we're going to shoot and it's going to feel like this. It's going to feel like we're missing the mark. We'll miss the mark a lot, but it won't be from distraction. It'll be from experimentation. Oops. So the fourth niyama is svadhyaya. And svadhyaya, sva is self, dhya is a wisdom that comes from studying the self. So with tapas, you get clear on discipleship to the target, which is really aligned action. So what are the actions? What are the aligned actions I need to take? And at that point, you got to make your best guess. You've got to make your best guess at that. Then you get to study the results of making your best guess. That's svadhyaya. So what I'd like you to do now is what are some actions? What are some aligned actions you think you should take to get to your desired outcome? So go ahead and just write a few things that I actually would need to do these things. And maybe even write how much per day and when. What aligned actions would you need to take? And this is experimental. So again, you don't really know. If you knew, you might have already done that and already been there. So what aligned actions do you need to take next? And this is experimentation to hit your desired outcome. Then my next question, as you write these down, is how would taking those actions change your personality? How would taking those actions consistently change your personality? Often what happens with tapas is when we're so disciplined to the target, we have such strong discipleship to the target. We're willing to sacrifice who we've been in the past. We're willing to change the way we use time, change the way we use space, change the people we connect with. We're willing to change, right? We're saying like, this is so important. I get that I can't be who I've been because being who I've been has led me to here, which is good, but it's not where I want to be next. So something's got to give, something's got to change. We make that sacred by doing the experiments. What happens from the experiments that we run, if we're committed to those experiments and we don't get distracted, is really what happens next is we get a lot of feedback. Oops, sorry. We get feedback, and that feedback that we get is svadhyaya. Those are the lessons learned. What did I learn from taking action? I'm reading right now, Mentor to Millions. It's a book about Kevin Harrington. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's sold a gazillion copies, translated into a gazillion languages. Kevin Harrington was like the father of the infomercial. He grew over 20 products to over $100 million. So he's very popular in the like small business success story realm. And it was interesting because he was giving this talk and he was saying, the first few questions after his talk were around like, how did you make this thing successful? How'd you make that thing successful? And then, a bit into the Q&A, someone's like, tell us about your failures. And he's like, we need another 5 hours. He had like a 1 hour window to give a keynote speech in front of thousands of people. And then, had the little Q&A and they're like, we need so much more time to talk about all the products have failed. Because of the 20 that succeeded, right? Thousands, not hundreds, thousands failed. Thousands failed. But he never stopped experimenting. And he never stopped learning from every small experiment. And to me, this is where I have not often seen as much, I would say, encouragement in the yoga community as I have seen in business or entrepreneurship communities I've been part of. Entrepreneurs are insane with experimentation. They get it. They know they have to change their behavior to change their outcome constantly, consistently. They have to change their thinking in order to hit a target. So they're willing to run experiment. Before the experiment is fully formed, they're willing to do it. They're willing to put it into action. And you have to be willing to experiment, whether it's in your finances, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in moving stuff around in your home, in your fridge, and like really getting your next best series of experiments off the ground to see, will those habits change my personality enough to start to hit the target? What do I need to learn? And when we get to that, right, when we get to like, oh, okay, I'm willing to constantly learn from yesterday. The hard part is applying it today. And that's what svadhyaya demands. It demands, because these 5 work together, it demands that from like whatever information you got from that, you're now willing to apply it, which means now you got to clean up your act on a whole new level, right? And you don't lose santosha. You don't get defeated. You don't get defeated in the process. You don't lose your contentment. You don't lose your presence. You know that this is part of the universal laws. You know that anyone who's been successful has had to do the same thing. They've had to experiment. They've had to learn. They've had to apply those changes. And to me, this is like one of the quickest pivots out of victim mentality, right? Where you're like, oh, poor me. Oh, it's only me that has these issues. Oh, it's only me with this disease. It's only me that has had this situation of XYZ that's led me to this situation right now. It gets you out of this. It's like, no. This applies to everybody. Anyone who's hit a target that you would like to hit has had to learn and fail, first attempts in learning. But from that failure, they've had to apply next action. And they've had to apply next action and then take next aligned actions. And this is the feedback loop. This is the feedback loop that you want to get ace at. And when you do, you start to up level your experiences of peak performance. I cannot emphasize enough how much experimentation is part of this path. An ability to implement from lessons learned. Svadhyaya, study the results. What's getting you to where you want to be next? Okay. So this is Rolf Sovik, who's he's the president and director at the Himalayan Institute, which is they're responsible for like Yoga International. I think many of you have probably like had good exposure to their work without maybe knowing it was Himalayan Institute. Really, really great people. There's a phenomenal book of the original founder I think it was a founder. He gave rise to the founder of this institute, and it's called At the 11th Hour, and it's the story of this really great yogi of about 100 years ago. Any case, self-surrender is not a process of defeat or a mindlessly submitting to another's will. It is the act of giving ourselves to a higher purpose. And you'll start to see how these things are really tied to each other. That as soon as we make a target sacred, right? As soon as we have discipline to the target, we have a specific goal, we make that sacred. Why? By being willing to sacrifice our personality and our past habits, by willing to take experiments, to learn things, to grow our skills, to grow our relationships, to know that we don't have what it takes right now. So we better figure out what it takes and become that quickly. To miss the mark, understand Svadhyaya, and come back to it, right? Like, what's my next small experiment? What's the next aligned action I can take? That when we do that, because we know that the purpose is it's a higher purpose, it's for a greater good. Now we're actually able to enter a deeper experience of, I would say it's openness. So in many ways, I would translate, I mean, in terms of modern psychology, you've got like the three main factors of success are openness, conscientiousness, and IQ. IQ, you can't really move your needle on, unfortunately. And all the studies in IQ in the last 100 years, like it's really hard to move the needle on IQ. Conscientiousness and openness, you can move the needle on. Conscientiousness, that's tapas. That's your follow through. So like when you watch a golfer take a swing, what happens after the club hits the ball? Does it stop? No, it keeps going. And a lot of golfers, if you talk to any golfer that's been, semi-pro or pro, like they'll talk a lot about practicing the follow through, right? It's the follow through. It's the follow through that really starts to make the biggest difference in whether or not you get to success. So part of the follow through is openness. The follow through is conscientiousness. How much you are gonna follow through, come hell or high water, not get distracted, stay keen on the target, apply Svadhyaya, apply aligned action, back to Svadhyaya, back to where do I need to clean up my act, right? Not losing contentment in the wild, knowing this is part of the game. Contentment's not affected. Contentment's always already available. It's already right there. It's already going. And you guys, we will send you all of the slides, I promise. So, niyama number 5, which is more or less like how you should act if you're on the path of self-realization. That's what yoga is, the path of self-realization. Niyamas are like how you should act. Is you want to partner with the universal laws. You want to be in this openness. And this is where, to me, tapas is conscientiousness. We can move the needle on conscientiousness. We can move our needle on openness. And openness is an earnest seeking of like, what do I need to know that I don't already know? Who do I need to meet? Who do I need to follow? Who do I need to learn from? What skills do I need? What tools do I need? How do I need to use my resources differently, my assets differently? How do I need to change to grow? Ishvara Pranidhana. what it to me is tuning us into is that there's like a higher level of awareness and it's always available. When we have set a target, right, that is of a higher purpose, right? And this is Rolf's teaching on Nisvara Pranidhana, right? Is like, have your sights on a higher purpose. When you do, you'll notice like it's easier to clean up your act. It's easier to make change. It's easier to take aligned action. There's less resistance because you know it's for a purpose that's much greater than selfish purposes, than smaller level purposes. So even if say the desired result, we'll take some of the ones that were in the chat. So there's one around 50K more in the bank account. There's another one about losing 10 pounds. We'll use those two examples. What is the higher purpose of the 50K? There is a higher purpose to it. If you can align to the energy of that, you will gain insight. You will gain a next level of insight than if it's just really for like the smaller level or the lower purpose of it. When we're able to surrender, and there's tools, I have a few little yogic tools for that. Seeing from the backside of yourself, seeing from the third eye, having a long-term horizon. Those are all part to me of where where tapas or aligned to action and having a deep vision, because tapas requires a target. It requires a long-term horizon, a longer-term horizon, where we start to be able to surrender that. And then we can live through these short-term experiences without losing the eye on the prize. We're also, and to me, this is very important, we're also to be in a higher level of openness. So ideas, people, tools, resources, ways of investing in ourselves that we've never done before, we become open to. We become open to like, oh, wow, like I had this desired outcome. I attended this workshop. It changed the way I was thinking. I then was more open. I was more in a place of surrender. And then this opportunity came my way and I was more able to receive it and not just block it, because my past self would have blocked it. My past self might not have invested that way. My past self might not have paid attention to people like that. My past self might not have eaten those kinds of foods or learned a new thing. But because openness increased, surrender's there. And a lot of people have a trouble, I think in the Western mind has a lot of trouble with surrender. If you do, just exchange it for openness, right? We're partnering with that. We're open, that we can open our channels. We can change. We can be super receptive. And as we're more receptive, we can experiment in ways that we previously never would have experimented. And then, because we're experimenting in ways we've never experimented before, we are going to get a lot of feedback. Sorry, oops, I want my Svadhyaya slide. We're going to get specific feedback. How did that go? Self-study. Then from that feedback, what's the next aligned action? And to me, that's where the 5 of these, like you start to work with them, you start to learn them for yourself. And it's like, oh, that's how that really works. I love this. This is another purpose statement on the bottom of this. Purpose, I learned this from Jordan Peterson, who he taught courses at Harvard and University of Toronto. Those are all online on YouTube. He's a background in psychology and the history of how psychology evolved in human beings. And one of his major realizations was that we have an orienting reflex towards a life of meaning, and meaning and purpose is more or less synonymous. So if we feel like we're in the grind and we're in the experience of life on top of us, or maybe this is in a relationship, like it feels like you could exchange life for our, any of it, trapped financially, that's life on top of you. Relationships are, not how you want them to be. That can feel like life on top of you. Finances aren't where they need to be. That can feel like life on top of you. Your body's in pain or uncomfortable, or maybe you've gained so much weight or you have toxicity in your physiology or like undigested stuff. Basically, that's how we say it in Ayurveda, is toxicity, because that which is not digested is toxic to the physiology. That can all feel like life on top of you. So when that's happening, right, what there is there's this orienting reflex towards better. And when you really nurture that and pay attention to that from a place of both conscientiousness, that's tapas, and openness, that's surrender, that's Ishvara Pranidhana. You're able to take in new ways of being, take aligned action, fail, svadhyaya kicks in, self-study. How'd you fail? What'd you learn? What can you apply next? How can you now take aligned action next? Because more than anything, what Peterson found was that if you're not living a life of meaning, you're not living your life. We have an inbuilt orienting reflex. What is that orienting reflex that's steering us towards a higher purpose? That's being a human being. And so if you feel like your purpose in life right now, that you're not quite sure what it is, then start to ask yourself that repetitively, like, what is my next purpose? What is my next highest purpose? Then you're right back where we started. You're right back at square one. What's the desired outcome? Because the way we know you will be living that purpose is something will happen in real time. We'll know. Something will have changed. Now you have a specific measurable. How will you know when you're living your specific purpose? And then this whole game with the niyamas, it begins again. And it's quite circular, and it's dynamic and super interactive. All right, so my hope in this was that basically that the yoga philosophy would help come alive for you to live more in peak performance. Like, we all have the inbuilt technology to do this. I'd say in a lot of ways, it's sort of covered up by the busyness of modern life, which can just feel like this all the time, that there's just like distractions. Distractions from higher purpose everywhere. Say you're trying to make improvements in your body and you're just like, wow, there's just like junk food everywhere. There's like, it's so hard. Or say you're trying to get to bed earlier and you're like, wow, there's like junk media everywhere. Or you're just trying to, really focus on what you need to do. And there's all these people that have interactions with you and expectations of you, and you can't focus on you. Right? It's really easy to get distracted from a higher purpose in your life. A lot of the reasons I wrote the book Master of You and designed the course, which is now a 2-year program, Master of You, because we find it does take about 2 years to experience and adopt fully the operating system, to hit targets on time, to be in peak performance consistently, and to know how to continue to be there, to be in contentment, to be in santosha, and live in alignment with all these different aspects of life in the complex modern life, right? Where it's like your finances are on target, your body, your home, your relationships, your goals, and your bigger goals, so that you're able to be even more capable in your future. So in any case, we have I told you guys if you stayed till the end, and you did, so good for you. We have a special offer. I have a 10-day crash course for you to get really clear on higher purpose, on goals. It's called Change Your Life. And it's a $500 course, but I'm really happy to be able to give you guys a massive 90% discount. So you can get it for $47. I'm going to put it in the chat. It'll be available for 24 hours. So it's yogahealer.com/change-your-life-enrollment. And the promo code, because it'll say it's $500 or $497. Use the promo code, use Action Taker, one word. And I'll just walk you through a few things with it. Basically it's a crash course. The reason I make it 10 days is it's like, if you can focus fast and hard on it, you won't lose access after 10 days, but we really encourage you to just do it in 10 days. What I want you to do is get super clear on your ambition, your vision, how you're going to need to align your time and your space to make that happen, and to find your people and your plan. And that's basically what we're doing in there. So if you liked this, you'll love that.